When a project doesn't work, they call the UX designers. Then they roll out the heavy artillery.
It'll be fine.
The good old UX processino,
Oakley dokley.
the designo thinkero.
Calm down, diddly 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 diddly.
But is it really necessary?
Well, we're waiting.
Most hardcore designers say that you need to first do the research before you do any design. This is supposedly the right thing to do even with redesigns of existing products. But that's wrong.
He said what?
Here is why. Now, this is high level of UX blasphemy, but we've done nearly 500 projects since Hypeforce started, and it has proven to work with every single redesign that we did. I believe the reason that hardcore UX evangelists oppose this approach is that it's based on UI and patterns. Things many of them are not as comfortable with as talking for hours in meetings. Research is of course an integral part of making a good digital product. The circle of design that really defines the entire thing is design, test, repeat. And some say that test goes first, then design and then repeat. But for redesigns, this version works a lot better. It all comes down to what the users can tell you about the product. The best way to have real, actionable insights is a set of qualitative data, which basically means not typical statistics, but rather a compilation of what people said about their issues with the product. What they liked, what they disliked, what they were confused by. This kind of research gives you the most insight into repeating patterns that need to be fixed. A lot more than trying to interpret raw data because it's a lot easier to interpret them wrong. So where's the problem?
Where?
Well, most users are not that tech savvy and they're definitely not designers, maybe some of them are. That means that the feedback they give you is based on their entire experience with the product. From my experience, about 90% of all digital products that need a redesign have some sort of layout, readability or clarity issues within them. These issues are non-negotiable. They don't depend, as UXers like to say, they're simple rules of how we humans process information. If something is not clear, not readable, and has a confusing layout, it already breaks the experience for the users. That's the sort of first impression. That first level of interaction, and they're already frustrated. That leads to the rest of their experience being skewed by those initial problems. La la la, going about town, what a beautiful town. I need to book a hotel for tonight, so let's do this. Okay, that app looks good. Let's try this. Okay, it's installing and here we go. Find a hotel nearby. Doesn't work. The buttons are too small. I hate this app. That also means that if you start asking them questions about what's wrong, they either won't be able to specifically say it, or they'll point out to these obvious things like, oh, this is super hard to read. To fix this, we use what we know about how people process information and how our brains are looking for patterns, structure, and hierarchy. When we adjust the layout, fix the typography, improve contrast, and highlight the on-screen elements properly, we end up with a lot less friction for the users. Here is a couple of steps and a very simple process of how you can fix those initial UI mistakes. We're gonna start with the font, because condensed fonts are pretty unreadable. So we're gonna change it to a much safer font and it already looks better. Now let's bump up the contrast on the category cards by making them glassmorphic, and they're already a lot more readable now. Now let's fix the font in the actual search results and also make it bigger because it was too small to be comfortable to read. Then align everything to the same left margin and it's already a lot easier to read. If you're making an app for a country or a culture that reads from left to right, like in this case, that left edge is super important to follow. Then set consistent spacing, so we clearly see where are the groups and which elements belong where. The next and super important step is to make the button larger and more readable, so both change the size of the button and the text size. This is super important because comfortably pressing that button is what makes the app money. The final part is a dark overlay on the photo so we can see the text no matter what's in the photo, and then adding a context icon for the calendar to actually modify the dates. And all of these fixes can really be done in a matter of minutes, and then you'll have a lot better feedback from the users. Now, after the obvious is fixed, interacting with a product without the issues, they can now truly tell us whether the product does what it's supposed to and what we can improve. Research is a great way to make things better, but it also has to be done smart, otherwise you'll end up doing it twice anyway. One to figure out those obvious problems and then one more time to figure out the real issues. So why waste time? Fix the obvious and then test. That's the best way to approach most redesigns, and it's a lot faster and cheaper too.
That is the way these things are done.
What do you think about this approach? Let me know in the comments, and as usual, thanks for all the likes, all the subscribes. You are awesome and I appreciate all of your support. And most of all, have a beautiful day. Cheers.